Alright guys, so I'm gonna react to this video here called 2025 will be make or break for Marvel. I don't know that I necessarily agree with that, just because I feel like even if the movies in 2025 are like bad or underwhelming, it's like they'll probably still be able to get people in for Doomsday and Secret Wars. I feel like that's the case. I could be wrong, but I mean, in a lot of ways, I don't think he's wrong, right? Like, I think when it comes to Marvel on television, like Daredevil Born Again, I feel like might be the last straw for a lot of people. um, they have some very like important characters in 2025, right? Like if like they obviously want to make Anthony Mackie as Captain America work. You got to make a good, Captain America Brave New World. There is a whole bunch of, behind the scenes struggles with that. Fantastic Four, those are going to be some core primary characters moving forward. You got to make that movie work. So obviously it's a very important year for Marvel. Is it necessarily make or break? I don't know. Might be hyperbole on the part of the guy. So let's just watch the video.
3 was a difficult year for Marvel. Sure, Guardians 3 was a huge hit critically and financially, and Loki Season 2 was strong, but beyond that, I don't know, you got The Marvels, which wasn't terrible, but was Marvel's first genuine...
The Marvels is genuinely, like, the worst MCU movie. It really is. And, like, I'm not, like, that's not... Like, it's also what's really funny about it is that people will, like, use it as an example of, like, oh, when you go woke, you go broke. And it's like, the Marvels isn't even woke. It's not political. It doesn't have any feminist politics. It doesn't have any like social politics. It doesn't have any kind of like, it's just, it is a movie that is void and vapid, and it just doesn't have anything to say about anything whatsoever. It is just a nothing movie. It's awful.
Bomb. Then Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania was a big mockable mess, but hey, at least it introduced a big new memorable villain. Never mind. And then there was what I genuinely believe is the overall worst thing the MCU has ever produced: Secret Invasion.
Honestly, I don't really get the this level of hate behind Secret Invasion. It's like it's overall like pretty underwhelming, but it's like, is it worse than I don't think it's worse than like Moon Knight or like the Marvels. It's like it's not great, but when I look at like the Marvels and I look at like something like Moon Knight, these are like projects where I'm like, I don't know that I even really understand what what you're trying to do with this. Like something like Moon Knight or the Marvels, they just felt very like incoherent to me. I don't really get that vibe from like Secret Invasion. Is it just me? I mean the ending is pretty like, what are we even doing here with the whole like Emilia Clarke Super Skrull situation? But I feel like, I don't know, for the most part, I felt that Secret Invasion was like fine. I don't know. This isn't an unpopular take.
Invasion. Just an absolute disaster, filled with baffling deaths, pointless reveals, and at the heart of it, just all kinds of...
Well, the Maria Hill death, in my opinion, was like that was like a pretty decent way to open up the series, right? To be like, hey, anything can happen, guys. Anybody can die. Anybody can be a Skrull. This is a Secret Invasion, guys. But then it's like, yeah, I mean, he is right at the end of the day that they don't really do anything with it. It's also just like it also just became very apparent that this probably should have just been an Avengers movie where you could actually get all of the stars, like the big stars, be like, oh, this person was a Skrull the whole time. Oh, you didn't know. Oh, this person was a Skrull. Because then you could have actually had like an insane reveal, like, I don't know, like Robert Downey Jr. or like Tony Stark was a Skrull the entire time, but yeah, you can't have it now because obviously you're not going to be able to get. Well, Tony Stark is dead, to be fair, but you know what I mean.
of awful messaging. So Marvel took 2024 slow. It turned out to be one of their best years since Endgame, with Echo, X-Men 97, Deadpool and Wolverine, and Agatha all along. That was the
Okay, well, sans Echo, yes, this was a very strong year.
easy part. Marvel is now staring down the
Wait, what were
barrel
all
of
the shows?
Wolverine and Agatha
Oh, okay.
all
Yeah,
along.
yeah.
That was the easy part. Marvel is now staring down the barrel of 2025, which promised
That is a good point. I mean, 2024 actually has been a very strong year. Like, Echo wasn't very good, but, like, X-Men 97 is one of the best things that, or I think it probably is the best thing that Marvel Studios has ever produced. And, yeah, like, Deadpool and Wolverine, I don't personally think is the strongest movie, but in terms of pleasing fans, I mean, it obviously did that. And, yeah, Agatha All Along was, like, surprisingly good. Like, it started off a little, like, I liked it at first. I was like, okay, well, I want to see where this goes. And then, like, by the end of it, it's like, oh, this is, like, it, like, slowly sneaks up on you, and it's like, oh, yeah, this is, like, one of the best things that Marvel has done. Like, this is actually quite good.
promises to be its biggest year in ever, really. 3 movies, 4 shows, a bunch of other things. And as the internet's favorite Marvel show, I want to take a video just to talk through it, set some expectations for fun. But before we get to 2025,
So I think that the main thing about it is that they're, like, they have said that they're going to slow down. This is, like, 2025 is a year of pooping out a bunch of the stuff that they have, like, that they've already made. So, like, stuff like Ironheart and, like, Captain America Brave New World and Your Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man and Wonder Man, like, these are shows and movies that Marvel, like, already made before they started their new initiative of slowing things down and taking their time and whatnot. So for me personally, it's not until I watch something like Daredevil Born Again, which we know for a fact that they basically, like, redid the entire thing. It's a new show. So that I will consider that to be a part of, like, the new initiative. Like, it's not until I get, like, Fantastic Four, which is a movie that I think is going to be completely a part of their new initiative. Like, for me personally, if I watch Captain America Brave New World and it's bad, I'm not going to really sweat it. If I watch Ironheart and it's bad, not going to really sweat it because I know that that's, like, a part of the old era of Marvel. But I mean, listen, if we get to Fantastic Four and it's bad, like, that's not a good sign for Marvel going forward. If we watch Daredevil Born Again and they mess up Daredevil, that's going to be rough. Like, that's going to be really rough.
2024 has one more thing that's worth talking about.
Sometimes
Oh,
I need to
yeah, what
paraphrase.
if?
It's easy
That's
to
still
make
a
your
thing.
work clearer and more
I don't know if it's worth talking about, but sure.
And I bet a bunch of you are saying, wait, they made a What If Season 2? They certainly did. It released around Christmas of 2023, and it was surprisingly good. As someone who is not a humongous fan of Season 1, I think Season 2 is a huge improvement. And no, it is not only because Justin Hammer showed up to do a Die Hard homage and it was great, although I love that. No, it was just, I feel, a stronger interrogation of the premise of What If. Episodes with actual pitches, like what if Thor Ragnarok happened but with Iron Man instead of Thor, which was originally planned to be a Season 1 episode, or what if Nebula was a Nova Corpsman, or what if Hela found the 10 rings, what if the Avengers assembled in the 80s. They even used Captain Carter to do a What If Steve Was the Winter Soldier episode that managed to work the Black Widow mythology into his backstory. And they introduced Gowry, the original Mohawk character with the power of an Infinity Stone. Sure, the ending of the season goes a little off the rails, but at least I think it does so in a fun way. And the stories drew from genres like neo-noir and 80s action comedy and were inspired by connections between characters like alcoholism or warriors from a hidden world looking for a family or supporting characters who never got a shot at the prime time. So Season 2 was fun. Season 3 looks pretty promising as well. Between this
Yeah, Season 2, it was better than Season 1. I'm not going to sit here and say it was great or anything, but yeah, I largely agree with what he said.
And something else which we'll get to, it seems like the animated material is going to be drawing largely on the characters from phases 4 and 5, which is nice because most of them haven't gotten more than one big appearance. I think a lot of what made phases 1, 2, and 3 special was the small connections. Falcon, for example, shows up in how many projects in his first few years? He debuts in Cap 2, he has a cameo in Age of Ultron, he has a bigger cameo in Ant-Man, and then he's a main player in Cap 3. Compare that to Kamala Khan, a thoroughly popular character, but one who, since her debut in 2022, has only made it into her own show and the Marvels. If this was phase 2, she'd have been in 2 other shows by now and an Avengers movie. And yes, corrections, Jackals, I know she was also in the cruise ship movie thing, but I'm not counting it because I hate cruise ships. We've already seen bits of one episode with Red Guardian going on some sort of road trip with the Winter Soldier. It also looks like we're getting a mech episode and more Shang.
Yeah, I mean, I think that really speaks to the biggest problem that the MCU has right now is that they're not willing to just make an Avengers movie. Like, the reality is that characters like Thor and Captain America, they didn't become mainstay players in the MCU. They didn't become like big pop cultural like icons until they showed up in that first Avengers movie. In my opinion, Iron Man was the main character that like it jump started the MCU, and he was like the main character that instantly became like a zeitgeist that everybody loved. It wasn't until the first Avengers movie that I think people really started to fall in love with the MCU and with Captain America as a whole. And I do think it's like it's a little unfair that the expectation of characters like Shang-Chi and to some extent Sam Wilson, Captain America, like the expectation is that they're just gonna like be in a movie and just immediately pop off, which, you know, obviously they should be trying to make the best movie possible and hope that should be the goal of that happening. But there should also be the idea of, hey, they're all going to pop up in an Avengers movie and they're going to be on the main stage in a major way. And like the fact that they're now thinking of like, we can't make an Avengers movie unless it's a big like Endgame level event, right? And now it's like, well, we can't do an Avengers movie unless it's some big stupid multiverse thing. I think that's a massive disservice, I think, to your current characters that you're trying to prop up. Like, we're not going to think that we're not going to treat Shang-Chi like he's Iron Man if you don't treat Shang-Chi like he's Iron Man. We're not going to treat Sam Wilson like Captain America if you don't treat Sam Wilson like Captain America. So it's like, in my opinion, we already should have gotten an Avengers movie that is smaller scale with Sam Wilson as Captain America, with Shang-Chi, you know, with Iman Vellani as Miss Marvel, you know, with Brie Larson as Captain Marvel, with I don't know, I'm just trying to think of all the characters that would be on the team. Like we should have gotten a smaller scale Avengers movie that highlights those characters. And it's like, would that movie make like $2.8 billion? Probably not. The same way that the first Avengers movie with Iron Man and Captain America and Black Widow and, you know, Hulk and Hawkeye, like that also didn't make $2.8 billion. But it's because you can't expect that right off the bat. So that's my main problem. I think that's one of the like major problems that the MCU has had, is that they seem to not be willing to take their new characters and put them on the main stage and tell us that they're important. You know what I mean?
And apparently more Agatha. If I could make one plea to Marvel, don't do the daily releases. Do 2 episodes a week. 1 a day is impossible for me and my fellow YouTubers to cover, and it makes the whole thing difficult for people to digest, and once a show hits the backlog, it tends to stay there. There's still time to fix this, Marvel, but okay, so that brings us to 2025, which starts with a very different cartoon. Now, most of what I've seen for this one comes secondhand, courtesy of footage of D23, but the new sizzle reel showed a few seconds, and I'm kind of optimistic.
I personally hate this art style. I think it looks really bad. It literally looks like a GameCube game, but okay.
Find the new art style a little much. Yeah, but you know what? They're clearly going for something, and I respect that. And I enjoy
Sure,
the
that's
comic
fair.
panels. I just think the colors might lose me. I like the inclusion of comic characters, like the Runaways and Midnight Suns' Nico Minoru, and I adore the Coleman Domingo Norman Osborn casting. I wouldn't mind seeing that crossover in
I think it's very funny that they decided to race swap Norman Osborn in order for them to do the hair. that is just that is just very funny to me.
into the MCU. I think the new costume is fun. Seems like there will be quite a few costumes in the show. I also think that guy he hit in the head with a brick better be a super soldier, because that's the kind of hit that can kill you, especially if it's so strong that it breaks the brick. Looks
I think he did something to deserve getting hit in the head with a brick. I think that, your consequences have actions. That's not I did that backwards, but you know what I mean?
like Spider-Man's going to need a really good lawyer again, which we'll get to. But first... Now listen, I'm quite worried about this one. For those of you out of the loop,
Yep.
Captain America Brave New World, or New World Order, as it was originally called, has apparently been reshot. A lot. Now, I will be the first to say, reshoots, and even day
Yeah,
of...
we just saw Giancarlo Esposito. He was originally not in the movie. Like, we know for a fact that this movie was reshot to the extent that they just added in a brand new character in Giancarlo Esposito.
of rewrites are not always a bad thing. Many of everyone's favorite Marvel things involve reshot plot points that are so consequential you would have to assume they've been there the whole time. But when done well, reshoots and rewrites can make a movie better. But also sometimes a movie is bad, it scores poorly in test screenings, and it is reshot a lot, leading to a movie that is also bad but maybe different. Like Madam Web got reshot a lot, and I don't think they fixed it. Sometimes
Yeah, I mean, it's like right now we're like operating with the hope that, so for I guess to explain to people that might not know, so before 2020, right, before the era of the MCU Disney Plus show, the way that Marvel worked was there's a guy at the top, Kevin Feige. He's a studio executive, but he's also like a pretty creative producer, and so he was the brain. He was the mastermind behind the MCU. Like, yes, you had individual directors that did, wonderful work on their individual movies, but at the end of the day, like, he was the guy that made everything work together. That was the reason why you could get somebody like the Russo brothers to do Captain America: The Winter Soldier. Before they had done The Winter Soldier, they'd really only done like episodes of Community, and I think they directed like Yumi and Dupree. It's like there was no indication that they could direct a massive blockbuster like Captain America. However, you hire them, right, to work with Kevin Feige, and Kevin Feige can kind of guide them. He can kind of mentor them, and they can eventually get to the point where they're the guys directing the Avengers movies. So coming into 2020 and 2021, the CEO of Disney is changed, right? Bob Iger was the CEO. A guy named Bob Chapek comes in. And Bob Chapek puts in a rule where he's like, I need X amount of Marvel movies and Disney Plus shows every year. Doesn't matter what it is. You have to get out this many amount of movies and shows in a year. And it got to a point that Kevin Feige was simply overwhelmed, right? Like, he simply couldn't oversee all of the projects. So, whereas beforehand, Kevin Feige was able to assure quality on all of the MCU movies, right? And that's not to say that they were all great or anything, but there was like a pretty consistent level of quality that's honestly very impressive, right? When you look at Iron Man 2, Infinity War, and Endgame. However, post this new like demand from the CEO of Disney, Kevin Feige could not ensure quality. So and now we're in a situation where they got a guy like Julius Ona to direct Captain America: Brave New World. He's really only directed like smaller films. Like, he's directed some stuff like I forgot what the name of it. It's like Loose. That was, I think the movie's Loose. Pretty interesting movie, but it's a smaller film. I think the biggest thing he's directed is the Cloverfield Paradox, which unfortunately was not like a very strong showing. I didn't watch the movie, but from what I understand, it's not a great movie. And so, like, this is a guy that clearly has potential, and seemed like a pretty decent candidate to direct a Marvel movie because of the process that used to be there, where Kevin Feige would bring in a director that, isn't the greatest, or not that he isn't the greatest, but he's not the most experienced when directing big blockbuster movies. But under the mentorship of Kevin Feige, we can use his strengths and mitigate his weaknesses. However, in this new era of Marvel, that Julius Ona guy coming in and directing Captain America Brave New World, he's probably completely overwhelmed. He's like, I don't really know what I'm doing. Kevin Feige isn't here to mentor me. And I feel like that's probably one of the big reasons why it was such a disaster. It's because you had a guy in there that just didn't have the experience. Whereas it's been okay in the past with the MCU, but we're now in a completely different situation. So we have to just hope at this point that the reshoots for Captain America Brave New World is now operating under the old model, because at some point that new CEO Bob Chapek was fired from Disney. He was ousted, and now Bob Iger is back, and Bob Iger sort of put everything back to the way it used to be, where Marvel no longer had the demand of we need this many movies and this many shows every year. Now Kevin Feige is able to set his own cadence and whatnot. So, and that's the reason why 2024 just didn't have any releases, right? It had fewer releases. So yeah, all of that is to say is that we can only hope that all of the reshoots with Captain America is now under the old paradigm, where Kevin Feige isn't just leaving some inexperienced director out to dry. But we'll see. I mean, it's also entirely possible that project is just doomed. I mean, we really do just have to wait and see.
Reshoots are not enough, and I am worried about Brave New World. On vibes, I think the trailer's strong. In fact, many people who have seen this trailer that was released at D23 in Brazil agreed that the movie looks cool. I think this comes down to some very effective editing and slick-looking action scenes. I am very excited for the visuals of Sam buzzing around aircraft carriers on the big screen. I think that looked great in Falcon and Winter Soldier. But also, it sort of seems like Brave New World is going for the style of Winter Soldier without the human connection that made that story work. Without Bucky, Cap v Hydra can be entertaining, but the personal stakes making everything so much more complicated are why people look back on that movie so fondly. This is not a preemptive review of Brave New World. I just want to throw it out there that 2025 might start the same way as 2023, with a big, expensive movie that's okay. And I just know that if that happens, which I'm not guaranteeing...
Well, Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania it's a little worse than okay, to be clear.
It will, but if it does, there will be endless film bloggers using this moment to proclaim that Marvel is cooked. It's over. And I think A, that is a wild take in the wake of Deadpool and Wolverine and Agatha all along, but B, it's February, and I've got a feeling the real winners are coming later. So judge slowly. Alright, back to The Very Good Lawyer.
Winterland, tell me all your secrets.
This is actually a fun video to watch. I didn't realize that it was just going to be him slowly going through everything in 2025. I'm actually glad I'm making a video reacting to this. It's probably something that I should be making on my own, which maybe I still will. We'll see.
All right, let's talk about everyone's second favorite, Matt. My actual first name is Matt. Nando is a nickname. It's a long story. Anyway, Daredevil Born Again is many people's most anticipated Marvel thing of 2025, and for that same reason, it is the one that most scares us. Season 3 of Netflix's Daredevil is phenomenal. As close to a perfect season of television as Marvel anything has
very
produced.
good.
And many fans, myself included, were happy to leave the series behind. Sure, Matt was coming to the MCU, but he could do what he's been doing so far, popping up in She-Hulk and Spider-Man with maybe a bigger role in Spider-Man 4 or a Defenders show, which would be a good idea since they never made one of those. It's a common misconception, but Iron Fist and Netflix's Defenders and, let's say, Jessica Jones Season 2 are all some sort of Mandela effect situation where we think they happened and even vaguely remember plot details, and it's even playing on screen right now, but it actually never happened. But it's no surprise that Disney thought it would be a great storytelling.
I actually liked the Defenders. I thought it was fun. I don't know, like, is it as good as, Daredevil or season 1 of Jessica Jones? It's like, no. But I thought it was good.
And also money-telling opportunity to bring back The Man Without Fear for a 4th season. But apparently, that was as far as the thinking went, because according to reports, the original Daredevil Born Again, much of which was fully shot, stunk. Matt barely wore the costume. Many of the supporting characters were not involved, and the story just didn't have the juice to justify calling Matt out of retirement for one more big score. But then, something amazing happened. Marvel learned something. Like that TV shows have showrunners who oversee production, and TV shows aren't just big 4-hour-long movies chopped into 6 pieces. So they took Daredevil Born Again back to formula. And it certainly seems like they've got something different on their hands. Pretty much every significant friend of Daredevil's is back. And some fun frenemies, and even an arch nemesis or two.
Yeah, to be clear, what he's talking about there is Marvel. Initially, they had this like weird, like way of operating where their shows didn't have showrunners, which is like insane. It's like the shows would be like show ran by studio executives. Like that's how it was working. And you would get these like weird situations where directors would come in and kind of like just be like, okay, well, we don't have a showrunner to guide us, so we're just gonna do our own thing. And I feel like that's like most apparent with Miss Marvel, where it's like you have the guys who directed like the first 2 episodes, and they have this like really cool, like almost Scott Pilgrim energy to them, Edgar Wright energy to them, and then that's just gone for like the middle of the show. And then I believe the guy who directed the first couple episodes came back to direct the last episode, and all of a sudden that energy is back, and is like, what is even happening right now? But now they're actually going to have showrunners, right? A showrunner is essentially like the director of a show, where they're the guy that is like, they're in charge of everything. They're in charge of maintaining consistency. Like they are overall in charge of the show. And it's been insane and ridiculous that Marvel has been operating without showrunners. I mean, it's probably like the main reason why a lot of their shows feel lackluster.
Seems like the story is going to feature the trial of a vigilante, something that shockingly never happened in the first 3 seasons. Sure, Punisher took the stands, but he immediately went to prison, so he didn't get to do any of the fun court stuff. Then we're seeing an adaptation of Muse, one of the newer Daredevil villains who has a recognizable look and gimmick, but a very vague backstory in the comics, which gives the team the opportunity to take some fun liberties. So fingers crossed. Everybody's where they need to be. I just pray that Marvel is able to get this right. Speaking of things Marvel's taken a couple of swings at, let's talk about... I've got one word for you. Beef. One of 2023's most interesting and awarded new Netflix series was a comedy drama called Beef. If you never saw it, Beef is about 2 people who have a somewhat dramatic road rage incident that becomes the catalyst for their complete and total unraveling. Focuses on how a lack of or perceived lack of control is able to eat away at all of us and our relationships. So I was thrilled when I heard that Lee Sung-jin, the writer and director behind Beef, was taking another shot at the script for Thunderbolts. Because originally, I was skeptical. This Thunderbolt squad that in the comics is made up of colorful villains with wildly different superpowers is instead just going to be super soldiers and Black Widows. It's repetitive. It's dull. It's downright boring. Not you, Ghost. You're great. But no Red Hulk, no Zemo, just the sidekicks of Black Widow and Falcon. and Ghost, who again is doing great. I wondered, why this team? What makes them so special? And
it is true. Like, conceptually, the team isn't like the most entertaining, or like it is a little like repetitive. But I mean, in the trailers, it looks like they're doing a cool job with them. Like I like what I see, but that is actually an interesting point.
Not only seem to understand that, they made it the main character's defining flaw. They're spinning their wheels. In World of Multiverses and secret dragons and giant Egyptian god avatars, what are they worth? What purpose do they serve? And like the protagonists of Beef, our Thunderbolts believe they have no control over their lives. They're being led into these Black Ops missions that don't leave them so full or so filled. That trailer opening with Yelena's monologue.
There is something wrong with me. An emptiness. I'm just drifting, and I don't have purpose. I thought throwing myself into work was the answer.
It is the most relatable a superhero movie has sounded in a decade. Couple that with an absolutely stacked roster of fan-favorite MCU characters like Florence Pugh's Yelena, Sebastian Stan's Bucky, David Harbour's Alexei, Wyatt Russell's Walker, and of course Hannah John Kamen's Ghost, who is for a third time doing great. Taskmaster is also there. Then throw in Julia Louis-Dreyfus as a slightly less evil Selena Meyer, and whatever they're doing with the Sentry. I think this one could really deliver. So that's the end of Phase 5. And it seems like Marvel wants Fantastic Four First Steps to be the start of Phase 6. But that leaves one thing.
A message from the Sonic Department of Research and Deliciousment.
Save on any occasion with the Fun 99 menu. Grab 3 of your...
Yeah, like, I'm actually feeling pretty optimistic about Thunderbolts. Like, whereas, like, when I look at, like, the Captain America Brave New World trailers, it's like, yeah, I can tell. You can tell that this movie has been reshot a lot. There's just a lot of shots that don't look great. And it's like, you can tell that they're reshoots and that the VFX is just not finished. When I look at the Thunderbolts, though, it's like, it looks like a much more confident and coherent movie, right? It looks like a film. So I'm hoping that that's a movie that they're just like really confident in, and that, at least it feels like that just watching the trailer. So we'll see.
In 2023, Disney made some changes. Sensing a public distaste for 5 shows and 3 movies a year, they pulled back, scaled down, retooled a bunch of projects like Daredevil and Thunderbolts. And they were careful not to overwhelm audiences, so they spaced things out, gave them room to breathe. And it sort of seems like one show got lost in the shuffle, Ironheart, because there was just never a great time for it. So it seems like Marvel settled on mid-2025, since this thing has to get released eventually, which means people online got the sense that Marvel was dumping it, getting it off the slate so they could focus on other things. I mean, if they were excited about it, why weren't they in a rush to get it out? And that may be the case. But the trailer kind of worked on me. And no, I'm not talking about the 5 seconds Ironheart got in the Look Ahead trailer, although it did have some strong visuals that we haven't seen before. But the leaked D23 trailer told more of a story. It introduces a Riri.
You know, I made a video where I like watched all of those leaked trailers. I was like, I wonder if I can get away with posting this. Spoiler alert, I couldn't. But it was also one of those things where it's like, I feel like because I watched leaked trailers, I was able to just like remove all of it from my memory. Like, I was just able to be like, hey, you know what? I'm removing it from my memory. And then once I'm able to watch the real trailers, then I'll be able to like more genuinely react to it.
After being kicked out of MIT, joins up with some sort of crew that does heists led by Anthony Ramos's Parker Robbins, who in this goes by The Hood, but it probably makes more sense here because he's either doing this for the neighborhood or he's doing this as a Robin Hood thing. It always bugged me.
That would be a little cringe, I feel like, if they were like, I'm doing this for my hood, man. I feel like that might have the potential of coming off a little cringe.
Me because the usual hood in the comics is named after the hood he is wearing, except it is not a hood, it's a cloak. But there's already a guy named Cloak, so they made this guy Hood. It's a stupid name. Anyway, heists are cool. I also think the Ironheart suit looks great. People have complained for a while about how the recent nanomachine suits look fake.
Yeah, that's like the main reason why I'm excited for Ironheart, because nanotech can suck my cock. Hate it. It's literally the worst thing that the MCU has ever produced. Even more than the Marvels is just the concept of nanotech. Like, dude, like, seeing, like, just go back and watch the first Iron Man, okay? And you would be lying to me if you were to tell me that seeing, like, nanotech fucking form around Tony Stark is more satisfying than seeing all the interlocking plates click together.
Riri has to start at square one, and she can't just 3D print the suits. It seems like creating them and maintaining them is going to make these suits
that's
feel
so
a
much
lot
cooler.
more real. And the suit-up shots look great. Is this the project I'm most
That's so much cooler. Look at it. Look at the face plate. That's so much better than fucking nanotech.
I'm most looking forward to? Definitely not. But could be fun. It doesn't need to either, but could be. But you know what needs to be fun? Really fun.
Yeah, for sure.
Fantastic Four First Steps needs to be an absolute grand slam in a bunch of ways. Two important ones. It needs to be a better representation of these characters than we have seen on screen before, and it needs to showcase a fresh side of what the Marvel Cinematic Universe can be. Fortunately for the first family, I think these are achievable goals. First off, let's look at the better representation.
Well, the other thing is that it's coming out in the same month as Superman, which, like, honestly, I would argue that I want to say it's the month of July of 2025. I would argue that might be like the real like make or break moment for Marvel, because that might be like the moment where James Gunn comes out with a Superman movie that is like phenomenal, and it is directly compared to another flop MCU movie. Like, that might be a really sketchy situation for Marvel, at least like optically and in like nerd circles, right? Maybe it's not as dramatic of a situation in like general audiences, but like for like our circles, which isn't representative of general audiences, but that would be a rough moment if you put out another stinker and then in the same month James Gunn comes out and just pulls out all the stops and puts out a fantastic Superman movie. I mean, oof.
Of these characters. We don't know a lot about their personalities, but what we can read from their designs suggests they're going as close to the comics as possible. I loved Michael Chiklis' thing as much as the next guy, but he looked like a guy in a big rubber suit. No shade, they worked with what they had. But if the live-action thing looks anything like the design in this piece of promotional art, this will easily be the most physically faithful version of the character to date, and that bodes incredibly well for the rest of the family and their rogues gallery. But put looks aside for a second, the Fantastic Four can be deep characters. And again, no shade on Ioan Gruffudd or Jessica Alba, but the cast of this thing is perhaps the strongest of any Marvel film. They're all pretty much breakout stars. You've got a Reed and Pedro Pascal coming off an award-nominated performance as Last of Us as Joel, then Pieces of a Woman's Vanessa Kirby as Sue, Stranger Things as season...
Okay, I'd never seen Pieces of a Woman. I was about to be like, yeah, I guess Vanessa Kirby, she was fine in Hobbs and Shaw. He's pulling out, he's like, oh yeah, well, you saw her in some Oscar bait movie that nobody else saw. It's like, okay, fine, dude. Maybe she is a breakout star.
Season 4 and Gladiator 2's Joseph Quinn as Johnny Storm, and then the Bears have been Moss Baccarat as the Thing. And they're joined by Ralph Ineson, Julia Gardner, Natasha Lyonne, Paul Walter Hauser, and John Malkovich. I saw someone say it before, but it's true. If this was the cast of an A24 movie, people would be losing their mind. So between fantastic visuals and inspired casting, this group has so much potential to bring a version of these four to the screen that captures everything comic fans love about the characters. But then how are they doing something new? Well, the story is set in an alternate universe that's some sort of 1960s retro future tech utopia, and that story is being crafted by an admittedly large team. It's written by, among others, Avatar 2 and Kingdom for the Planet of the Apes' Josh Friedman, Transformers 1 and Thor Ragnarok's Eric Pearson, and Carnival Row and WandaVision's Peter Cameron. This is a team of writers capable of inventing or expanding upon exciting new worlds and societies, and they are being directed by WandaVision's Matt Shakman. These are projects with impeccable production design, and couldn't make this feel like something we've never seen. These are projects with...
Are we really going to say that Thor Ragnarok had impeccable production design? I mean, listen, I don't want to be an asshole here, but like, come on. This is what I got to be honest. This is a sidetrack here. I don't understand the glazing of Thor Ragnarok and the utter disdain for Thor Love and Thunder. Like, in my opinion, neither of these films are like great. But like, I don't understand the people that are like, Thor: Love and Thunder was too silly. It didn't take itself serious enough, and it represents the downfall of the MCU. Oh no, Thor's too goofy. They made Thor goofy. But these are like the same people that were like, oh man, Thor Ragnarok. Huh. What a knee slapper. What a jolly good time that was. It's like, they're more or less the same to me. I personally think that Thor: Love and Thunder is like a little better just because I found the actual like narrative and the characters to be more engaging. Like I actually found myself endeared by Thor and Jane's relationship. And you know, the whole Jane cancer thing was actually pretty emotional. It's like I don't understand. I'll be honest, I don't understand people when it comes to these movies.
Impeccable production design, and couldn't make this feel like something we've never.
But sure, no, the creatives that he listed make for a promising film. I would agree with that in general.
Seen in the Marvel Cinematic Universe before, the same way that Ragnarok and WandaVision were breaths of fresh air. The leaked D23 trailer seemed to serve largely to showcase the Fantastic Four's new world by taking these familiar TV settings like a documentary and a dating game and a kids' TV show and using them to contextualize these characters, have them fill familiar archetypes. I think that's really clever. If this goes right, Fantastic Four First Steps could be Marvel's next Guardians of the Galaxy or Black Panther type hit. One that opens up a new corner of the universe and attracts creatives who wouldn't otherwise have any interest in these movies. And the great thing about the Fantastic Four is there is so much ground yet to cover compared to everything in Marvel besides the X-Men. Take those other two I just mentioned. According to the Marvel Fan and Wiki, which is really good about this stuff, Rocket Raccoon has the most comic appearances of any OG Guardian with 423. T'Challa has 1,234 comic appearances. The Thing has 2,370. There are a lot of Fantastic Four stories left to tell. Speaking of T'Challa.
Sure.
Did you know your skin is the largest organ of your body? The lightweight moisturization of Old Spice lotion is like treating your skin to a glamorous...
Before I started writing this video, I didn't really know what Eyes of Wakanda was. And that's because 1, it's not really based off any specific comic, and 2, Marvel's been pretty tight-lipped on this one. Here's what we know. It's 4 episodes, produced by Ryan Coogler, although not that other thing he seemed to be working on, which was an Okoye spinoff or something. Who knows what happened to that? It's created by...
Yeah, I don't know. Like, I'm already turned off by like 6-episode limited event series. I can't really get excited about a 4-episode animated series. So we'll see.
Todd Harris, an artist who has worked on many Marvel storyboards, including for both Black Panthers and even the Wakanda Voices comic. It's an animated anthology set in the past that seems to chronicle the adventures of historical Black Panthers we have otherwise not yet met. It's 4 issues. We've seen a tiny bit, and it looks completely different from the What If style and the X-Men 97 and the Your Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man styles. We don't know which Black Panthers will show up. Apparently, there's a new character named Nori in there somewhere, and also, alleged spoilers, an Iron Fist will show up in at least 1 episode. But not
I remember
Danny
hearing
Rand.
about this.
It looks very cool, and while I wish it had at least a full 8-episode season, this feels like the kind of passion project that people will get excited about once they see more, and then who knows, maybe a second season will be bigger. Speaking of excitement leading to longer seasons, let's talk about a spin-off from What If Season 1. In 2025, Marvel is continuing its somewhat consistent tradition of releasing spooky Disney Plus stuff around Halloween. This started in 2022 with Werewolf by Night and continued this year with Agatha All Along. And in Halloween 2025, we're getting an entire series of Marvel zombies. Alright, entire series is a bit generous since it's also only 4 episodes, but still, better than nothing.
Oh, well, I all of a sudden got less excited about Marvel Zombies. Thank you.
Since this one is also quite late in the year, we don't know much, but we do have some promotional art that gives us a sense for which characters are involved. And like What If Season 3, it's the Phase 4 and 5ers. One thing that some people, myself included, are very excited about, this is one of the few 2025 projects with some Eternals. We've got Icarus confirmed and probably others. We've also got
Based, Eternals, love, Based. I like Eternals. I think it's a pretty good movie. It didn't make money, so I understand why we're not getting a sequel, but I still like it.
Ingo showing up in What If, and I wouldn't be shocked if the MCU's most famous Bollywood star also had something to do with the last Marvel project of 2025, which we'll get to. Another fun thing about zombies...
Oh yeah, he's talking about Wonder Man. Yeah, that would make sense if they had Kumail make a cameo in that, actually.
R-rated, so that's neat. Probably gonna mostly be characters getting ripped limb from limb, but I wouldn't mind an F-bomb or two. And this does continue the story that began in the What If Zombies episode from Season 1, so we're starting with most of the Avengers gone, a zombified Thanos, and still no Thor. I feel like this and What If are really pushing the MCU forward past Endgame. Spending more time with alternate versions of these new characters will make the real ones feel like staples of the universe, as important as Captain America or Iron Man, and that's what's gonna keep the MCU fresh. Also, Blade is debuting in Marvel Zombies, but as Moon Knight, because that's where we are.
Is that confirmed? Wait, what? Is that confirmed to be a thing? I just thought that was like a random character. Do we know that that's Blade as Moon Knight? Do we know if Mahershala Ali is doing the voice? What?
We are with Blade right now, and that leaves one big project to finish out 2025.
Oh, is this going to be the last
Closing
one?
out the year, I have really high hopes for Wonder Man. For people who are not familiar, in the comics, Simon Williams is a trust fund kid who gets incredible ionic superpowers, but then dies and comes back to life a bunch. He's usually an Avenger, and he's been in relationships with Carol and Wanda. He hangs out with Beast, but what he is probably mostly known for is taking a break from avenging and becoming an actor. And that idea seems to be the pitch behind the Wonder Man series that's showing up at the end of 2025. Simon Williams is an actor who seems to be trying to get the role of Wonder Man in some sort of movie. Whether he has superpowers at this point has yet to be seen, but I can see it working both ways. Either he has the powers and is trying to cash in on them and needs to learn to use his powers for good or something, or maybe Simon lies on his resume to make it seem like he has superpowers so he gets the part of a superpowered character. I'm not sure how that lie would work, like maybe based on some misunderstood public display. People think he has superpowers and he just goes with it and uses it to get ahead in Hollywood. Think Chicken Run or Rango or Road to El Dorado. Or it could be something completely different. Either way, I think Marvel is pretty strong when it comes to comedy, and they've got Andrew Guest, one of the writers behind some episodes of...
Well, not as of late. But sure, I understand what you mean.
30 Rock, Brooklyn Nine-Nine, and Community working on this one, and Guest did not just write any Community episode, he wrote, among others, Fistful of Paintballs and Advanced Dungeons and Dragons.
Yeah, I've never seen Community, but yeah, it's interesting. Like, Wonder Man is just such a weird project because it's like the idea of a comedy surrounding a guy trying to be a superhero and pretending to be a superhero, like, that sounds fun, but I just don't know how that works as an MCU series because of like certain expectations around being a superhero show. Like, would Marvel actually do something fun and different like that? I don't know, right? Like making a show about a guy that doesn't actually have superpowers but is pretending to be a superhero. I feel like that could be fun, but I don't think there would be any getting around the reality of they're gonna give him superpowers at some point. Like, they're not just gonna leave him non-superpowered.
And this is an area of the MCU I am really curious about. What is entertainment like in a universe full of actual superheroes? We've seen it in the background, like the movies that everybody's watching on the plane in Spider-Man Far From Home or the Steve Rogers musical. It is my favorite kind of world building, the stuff that The Boys does so well. So I want to see Marvel's take on it. And then the cast for this one, we've got basically live-action superhero Yahya Abdul-Mateen II as Simon. Then Ben Kingsley's back as Trevor Slattery, who appears to be Simon's acting coach. Ed Harris is playing Simon's agent, and then Demetrius Gross is Simon's brother Eric, who becomes a supervillain eventually. Listen, there's no guarantee this one is good, but I've been really hoping for something in the vein of She-Hulk, and this feels as close as we're gonna get. Plus, once he's introduced, Simon can play a lot of roles that he usually does in the comics. He's the Avengers pacifist. He's Vision's brain twin, and he's a founding member of the West Coast Avengers, a team that's shaping up nicely over the last few years. So what does all this mean? I don't know. While there are some movies and shows that it sure would be nice if they worked, there are a few that absolutely need to for this saga to be a success. Fantastic Four First Steps and Daredevil Born Again specifically have a lot riding on their shoulders.
Yeah.
Thunderbolts and Wonder Man look like they could be fun surprises, and if the rest are good, that's a nice bonus. So I guess what this really means is you're going to have a lot of stuff to watch in 2025. And a lot of it is going to be streaming. So you want to make sure that your internet connection is safe, but also fast. And that is where this video sponsor NordVPN comes in. I've been using NordVPN.
I'll let the ad play because I stole his content.
When I say I've been using it for years, it has been on in the background constantly. When I uploaded this video and all the other videos I've made in the last couple of years, all have been when NordVPN is on. And you never notice it. In independent speed tests, NordVPN has beat out every one of its major competitors. So if you've ever been like, oh, I wish I had better data security, but I'm worried about the internet speed, you shouldn't be. NordVPN has super strong encryption. You can use it to over 5,600 servers in 59 countries to check out geoblocked sites when you travel, especially if you're going to do stuff like connect to coffee shop Wi-Fi. There's also threat protection. It's another optional level of security that blocks anti-malware and intrusive ads and trackers. And at least before I started using NordVPN, when I thought about these, I always figured it was something you had to use on your computer, but no. The traditional NordVPN plan lets you install it on up to 6 devices, and that includes your phone. So you're browsing securely everywhere you go. And if you use my link that's on screen now, you get a massive discount of their 2-year plan.
Use his link, guys. Where is it? www.nordvpn.com/NandoVmovies. Use the link.
And on top of that, 4 months free. And NordVPN offers a 30-day money-back guarantee, so you can try it out and make sure you love it risk-free. Again, use my link that's on screen now for a huge discount of their 2-year plan and 4 months free. And of course, I have to thank everybody who continues to support the channel on Patreon. Everybody
Yeah, so that was a cute little video. Yeah, I mean, there are undoubtedly very important projects in 2025. I agree with him that on the TV side of things, I mean, if Daredevil Born Again is bad, that is going to be rough for the MCU. And Fantastic Four is also a very important project because they're going to be one of the pillars of the MCU moving forward. And at the end of the day, like what the MCU needs to get back to is that consistency. It used to be the case that the next MCU movie was going to excite people because they just had such a good track record. And in that sense, the MCU is already dead, right? Like when you hear about the next Marvel Studios project, there's no inherent excitement anymore. And that's because of a lot of middling movies, but I would argue for the most part because of a lot of middling Disney Plus shows that have deteriorated the brand. So, yeah, we'll see if they can get back to their former glory. And let me know what you think in the comments down below, and I'll see you in the next video. Goodbye.